Hello, Mr. Arbenigwr and Siarad speaking. And as Derek asks you on the weather bulletin every night, Shwmai, Croeso, welcome. Now, I have come here today to address you on the matter... Excuse me, very busy in the office, you see. Hello. Oh, yeah, boss. Yeah? Right, so that's meal. That's 1,000, isn't it? 1,000 people to speak Welsh by the year 2050. No problem at all, sir. Eh? What? Wait, what? Million? 1 million people to siarad Cymraeg by 2050? Oh, no. Mission impossible, sir. Yes. How do I know? Well, because I am Mr. Arbenigwr the genius, yes. And according to the last census, which was exactly 10 years ago now, there were 562,000 people who could siarad Cymraeg. Yes. But that was only 19% of the population of Wales, you see. And you want me to double that sum to 38% by the year 2050. No. Impossible, sir. What? The sack? Me? Give me a couple of minutes, sir, and I will return your call. Yes. Thank you, boss. Oh, dear. Did you hear that? You see, I work for those important people down in Cardiff Bay. Yes, Llywodraeth Cymru, the Welsh government, you see. I tackle all their problems, which isn't a problem for me, no, because I am a genius, yes, Mr. Arbenigwr. But they've given me a real problem now. They want to find 1 million people who can speak Welsh by the year 2050. 1 million! Whew. I have a job ahead of me now. Right. 10 points about the native language of Wales so that I can concentrate my mind on the job ahead.
Point 1. Point 1. Iaith, the old language. Our language, you see, is very, very old. How old? Well, let's travel back to the birth of our language. They say that the Welsh language is a Celtic language, but many thousands of years ago, the Celtic people didn't speak Welsh as such. They spoke Brythonic. Adik suo kuo minai. What does it mean? I don't know, but it is Brythonic, you see. Yes, and the Brythonic language was one of a family of Indo-European languages. And also in this family was the Celtiberan language of Spain, España, hola, and the Lepontic language from Italy, Italia, see? And the Galactic language. No, not from Star Wars, but from Turkey, yes. Have you heard of these languages? No, because they're dead, you see. They're long gone. They're not a Mawhyd, as we sing. But here on the islands of Britain, 2 languages survived for a long, long time. The Goidolic language and the Brythonic language. Now, the Goidolic language in time transformed into the Gaelic language of Scotland. It also morphed into the Manx language of the Isle of Man, and finally into the Gaelic language of Ireland. Conas y Tatu, Tommy Gomor. At the same time, the Brythonic language transformed into the Breton language of Brittany in France, you see, Kenavo, and also into the Cornish language of Cornwall, and most importantly for us, it morphed into a Iaith Gymraeg, our Welsh language. Yes, all of this happened around 1,500 years ago, which means, you see, that our language, Cymraeg, is a very, very old language. Yes. Point 2. Point 2. The Act of Union 1536. Now, back in the 16th century, more or less everybody in Wales spoke Welsh, you see. Yes, from nobleman to maid, from poet to peasant, they all spoke Cymraeg. But in the year 1536, something very important happened, and a big man was central to the story. Yes, King Henry VIII, the King of England, proclaimed his Act of Union. You see, King Henry VIII wanted to make two totally different countries, Wales and England, into one entity together. And he wanted one language and one language only to be spoken in these countries, and that language was, yes, English. In fact, he proclaimed in his Act of Union, no person that uses the Welsh speech or language shall have or enjoy any manner of office or fees within this realm. Wow. Could the people of Wales speak English at the time? No, they could only speak Cymraeg, you see. Yes, but the important people in Wales, the noble men and women, decided to pay to learn the English language so that they could get on in the world under King Henry VIII. Yes, and one day they all said, Hwyl fawr, ta-ta, forever, to their native language, and hello, how do you do, to the English language. And they spoke in English from then on, you see, to get on in the world under Henry VIII. So, the Act of Union of 1536 was a great threat to the survival of our language. Point 3, the translation of the Bible into Welsh. Now, in the age of Henry VIII, and indeed in the age of his daughter Elizabeth I, most of the people of Wales went to church on a Sunday. Now, all these people spoke Cymraeg, Welsh of course, but the services were either in English or Latin, and the Bible was in Latin, and they didn't understand a word. Well, that wasn't much use, was it? Cue the Bishop William Morgan. After 10 years of hard graft, he succeeded in publishing the entire Bible in Welsh by the year 1588, which meant that the people of Wales could go to church every Sunday and listen to a standard form of Welsh, you see. Yes, and now they could converse with each other and understand each other perfectly. Because back then, like today, maybe the people on the other side of the mountain in England or Wales spoke in a different dialect. Oh, in Wrecsam you'd say ene. Yes. Down in Pembrokeshire you'd say Wes Glyn. In the Swansea Valley you'd say mana monkey. And you'd say Rastlas bach amawr Bangarai in Bangor. But because William Morgan had now given us a standard form of Welsh, everybody could understand each other. And that was before pobl had come on the television even. Yes, not good, isn't it? So, Bishop William Morgan's Bible united our country linguistically and saved our language, more or less. Now, by the 19th century, education in Wales was growing from strength to strength. Our Sunday schools in chapels and churches had developed into daily schooling. Yes, but there were very important people in London keeping a beady eye on us here in Wales. And they decided that a report was needed into the state of our education. And the three wise men who were given this task were Mr. Llion, Mr. Symonds, and Mr. Johnson. Now, these three wise men stated in their report that the children, and indeed the schoolmasters of Wales, were dirty, lazy, drunk, ignorant and immoral, and living in grime. Yes, grime. Never heard of the place myself. And they said that the main reason for this was the Welsh language. They stated that every child in Wales, from immediate effect, had to be taught in English, and in English only, a language that most of those children could hardly understand at all. Well, the result of this report was the introduction of the Welsh not. Mathematics today, children. Now, what's dau a dau? Da iawn, pedwar. This morning, children, what's 3 and 3? What? Chwech? No! What's that? A 3 and a 3 are 2 trees. Come here, boy. Yes, you. You spoke to me in Welsh. We do not speak Welsh in this school anymore. We speak English. You will wear the Welsh not. If you hear another child speaking Welsh during the day, you will give them the Welsh not. Whoever wears the Welsh not at the end of the day will be punished, will be caned. Ha! Do you understand? The introduction of the Welsh not and hanging it around the neck of our children was like hanging a rope around the very survival of our language and culture. Point 6. Point 6. The Urdd Gobaith Cymru. Now, Mr. Lingen, Mr. Simmons and Mr. Johnson's report had angered many people in Wales. It created a backlash, and a feeling of national identity grew around our language, our culture, and our communities. And in 1922, a man called Ivan Owen Edwards established a youth movement for Wales, you see, Urdd Gobaith Cymru. Now, Ivan Owen Edwards wanted the children of Wales to have a chance to enjoy themselves in their own language outside the perimeters of the home and the chapel. He wanted the children of Wales to enjoy themselves playing sports in Welsh, competing in Welsh, and dancing in Welsh, if such a thing is possible, and meeting new Welsh-speaking friends from all over the land, you see. Ivan Owen Edwards also established the first official Welsh language school, and that was in Aberystwyth in 1939. It was a private school, but it was such a success that other schools opened to the medium of Welsh throughout our land. And these schools are still going today and are as important to the future of our language and culture as they have ever been. Point 7. Point 7. Protesting. Now, in the year 1901, according to the census, there were 1 million people in Wales who could speak Welsh. 1 million! If I could return to then in Doctor Who's TARDIS, my problem would be solved. But unfortunately, the TARDIS has developed a technical fault. And during the century that followed, the number of people that spoke Welsh decreased and decreased. The shadow of the Welsh not was lingering over our country, and we Welsh speakers had developed an inferiority complex. But in 1962, an old man called Mr. Saunders Lewis spoke on the radio, and he said, "We now need a revolution if we are to save our language." His voice was weak, but the message was strong. And in the summer of 62, the young people of Wales formed Cymdeithas, the Welsh Language Society. These young people took to the streets and demanded their education in Welsh, their television in Welsh. Right, who's coming out to paint with me? Paint what, I hear you say? The road signs of Wales. You see, back in the 1960s, all the road signs in Wales were in English and in English only. And so the young people of Wales decided to paint over them with green paint. For this, many of them were imprisoned. But by the 1970s, their campaign was bearing fruit, and many of the road signs were beginning to appear in Welsh as well. Yes, dim mynediad. Ildiwch. But when your language is dying, do not give way. Point 8. Point 8. Not tatus, but status. Status for the language. Since the Act of Union of 1536, it has been a struggle for the survival of our language. But during the last few years, many battles have been won, and laws have been put in place to ensure the status of the Welsh language. In the 1970s, BBC gave us Radio Cymru, our own radio channel in Welsh, and S4C in the 1980s gave us a television channel, but not without bitter battles. Young people climbed up television masts to protest, and a man called Dr. Gwion said that he would fast to death. He wouldn't eat another morsel until we could sit down and watch the newyddion, the news, in our own language. With protest came the protest songs, popular artists like David Llion and Mike Stevens, and in the 1990s, bands like the Super Furry Animals and Catatonia took our language to the far-flung corners of the earth and sang in Welsh. And who can forget the heady summer of 2016 and our Welsh national football team reaching the heights in the Euro competition with diolch emblazoned on their shirts, and the whole wide world becoming aware of our language and its status on every field. Point 9, y dysgwyr, the learners. Now, we are all learners throughout our lives, of course, but during the last 50 years, you, the learners of the Welsh language, have become the silent heroes of our nation. Thousands of you are learning Welsh with learnwelsh.cymru or Duolingo or Say Something in Welsh. You can now learn Welsh in that classroom, online or with your children, and show your love towards this ancient language of our land. So, point now. Hip hip hooray to the learners. Finally, point 10. Point 10. Gobaith. Hope. Now, if our language is still alive today, after all the trials and tribulations, there must be hope. Excuse me, esgusodwch fi? Hello, boss. Mr. Arbenigwr yn siarad speaking. Now, 1 million people to speak Welsh by the year 2050 is what you said, wasn't it? Yes. Well, with the help of the Welsh nation, sir, anything is possible. Yes. Hwyl fawr. And hwyl fawr to you too. Daliwch ati. Keep the faith.